Y'all, would you give a big warm welcome to Allison Ausband?
Good morning.
All right, here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna dive in for a few minutes. I'm gonna ask Allison some questions, and then we're gonna open it up to you all to be able to dive in. You have a new role as of January 1st, but let's go back first. You told us, now I'm saying this because I think you've already said it, you have been with Delta for almost 40 years?
That would be correct.
That would be correct, okay. So you don't look nearly old enough for that, but let's go back, Okay, take me back 40 years. The number one movie 40 years ago was, any guesses? She's like, Back to the Future. The number one song was Careless Whisper by Wham. Anybody? Yeah, Mindy, there you go.
Two people in the room.
Okay, here you go. This will make you feel good right here. The price of eggs was 80 cents a dozen. In the news now, you had just graduated from UGA and started your career as a flight attendant.
Yes.
Okay, take us back and tell us what that was like.
Well, first of all, good morning, everybody. Thanks for making it out in the rain. I was saying a few words under my breath at Kevin. I live south of the airport, so all the way up here, I was like, it's a long way up, but it's great to be here. And so I was a Georgia Bulldog. I know there's several in the room. Yes, go Dogs. Yes, go Dogs. And I was a radio announcer. I was a Grady grad radio announcer right out of college from Atlanta. And for me, it was Coke and Delta. And so did the announcing thing for a little bit and said, I want to get on with a big company. I love the values that Coke and Delta represented. And so I applied at Delta to get into public relations, and I got a no thank you. I'm sorry. We're not going to hire you. And so I said, I'm going to work for Delta Airlines. I'm going to go back at it. And, it was a pretty cultural moment for me at that, because I was like, okay, why did Delta turn me down? And it was everything, all those jobs, the public relations, all the merit positions, if you will, at Delta at the time were promote from within. So you had to start in a frontline position. Our CEOs worked on the ramp and they became a CEO. And so I had flown a few times. My dad worked for Norfolk Southern, but I thought, I'll go be a flight attendant. So, and for me at that moment, it was Delta is all about the people, and the people make Delta move every day. And so you need to start there, because that's where that's the heartbeat of Delta. So I applied to be a flight attendant, got the opportunity to do it, and another cultural moment for me, which I think is what Delta's all about, and Aaron was talking about connections. I had been flying for 4 months. We're all on probation the first 6 months to see if the job is for us, or all of that. And so there was a customer seated at 4B. It was the rudest customer. It was a female that I'd had in 4 months. And I didn't want to get a complaint, because I wanted to continue to work for Delta. I didn't want a customer complaint. And nothing I was doing was solving, her issue. And so I went back into the galley, started counting down from 1,000. What am I going to do? This is not going well. I'm trapped in this tube, and it's not going well. And, I remembered my instructors, my flight attendant instructor's voice in my ear saying, decompress, go back out, get on armrest level, and talk to this customer. So when I went back out, I learned that we were carrying her son below. And I'll never forget that moment. I still get a little emotional 40 years ago. It hit me at that moment. Her son had just passed away. We were carrying her son to bury her son, and this was the worst day of her life. There was nothing I could necessarily do to make, to help solve it for her, but I could make it a little bit more comfortable. Just a smile and just caring. And it hit me at that moment that this is what Delta's all about. Yes, we take people from point A to point B every day, but every single person that walks across in the front of that airport, that walks across that door, is on a journey. And it's our responsibility, and we have a huge accountability to be there for that person and make that journey better. So, and I've never forgotten that moment, which that was a culture defining moment for me. But so flew for a while, and then I headed up our reservations and customer care team. Some of you remember Song, the airline within an airline to compete with low-cost carriers. Was a part of that, and then prior to taking on this role, I headed up our in-flight group. I was over our customer experience, so I had our airports, reservations, flight attendant group, and product, and then customer experience design. So
let's talk about that, because you and I were together last year, which is, I think, when you said you would come and do this. Which
yeah.
We talked a lot about this idea of customer experience. You were the Chief Customer Experience Officer.
Right.
What's so crazy is that in the time since we talked about that, as of January, you are now the Chief People Officer.
Right.
And so you've flipped sides. I want to talk about that a little bit, because the whole idea for us of the Inside Out Summit is that brands that create authentic connections are built from the inside out. Mm-hmm. It doesn't happen just with customers. It's got to start with people. Can you talk about how you envision that and what part you're going to play in that with your team now?
Yeah, I'm 45 days into my new role, which has been great. But, I think it's been a great shift. I had, 90% of Delta is frontline individuals that move us every day. And I know for you, a lot of you have frontline individuals. Now I'm more in the people space, over the people. But in the end, it's about everybody wants to be valued. Every single person wants to be valued. And, this is kind of another lesson that from the customer experience side is back to my earlier analogy. And many of you know Shake Shack, Danny Meyer, great and huge leader in the hospitality space. He trains his team to say everybody that comes into his restaurant has a sign around their neck. Value me today. I just lost a loved one. Value me today. I'm here to have dinner, to make a deal of a lifetime. Value me today. I'm going, I'm coming in to interview. And, you think about that, that's how we have led, our teams and our people to respond to the customers. And now from a people perspective, Delta is all about people and people first. And we've got to do the same thing with our teams. 100,000 Delta people walk in every day with different things going on in their homes, or they want a career development, they want to learn and grow at Delta. And so I think it's just shifting lenses from the customer to this is how we treat our teams as people first.
Okay, when we were in your office, we talked a lot about Horst Schulze and Ritz-Carlton and this idea of ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen, and how important it is to invest in your people.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how you put that into practice at Delta, even maybe some specifics of how you guys do that?
Yeah, we are people first, and it started, we're 100 years old this year, which is we're the first airline to make 100 years old. Pretty amazing.
That's awesome.
But, it really goes back to our culture. And C.E. Woolman, who was here in Atlanta, and actually some of his grandchildren still live here, which is amazing. But he had a saying that every single airline can buy the same airplane, they can buy the same products, they can serve Coca-Cola, yay for Coke, but they cannot replicate Delta people. And that's how we started 100 years ago, and that has evolved. It might look a little different than it did with 60 employees when we started, and we now have 100,000, but it is about putting people first. And if we put them first, then the customer and the care for the customer is going to be there. So
let's talk about some of those, maybe even some specific programs, because I think when we encounter some different businesses and customers, they're like, our employee first strategy is we pay them more money. Yeah. If we just pay them more money, that's enough.
Yeah.
But another airline can pay them more money sometimes.
Yeah.
Talk about some of those specific programs that you do.
Yeah, I think it's far beyond that. We all need to live and, sustain ourselves, and so pay is important. But I think for us, it starts with our values. It's about servant leadership. It's about trust. It's resilience. Those are our values. So we are here to serve our people, not manage them. We're here to serve and lead, and that's our mantra. It starts for us day one with our employees from an onboarding perspective. We have senior leaders with every new employee group that comes and joins Delta. We're there. When I started 40 years ago on a Sunday, the head of the flight attendant group was there on a Sunday to welcome me into the company. So we onboard in that way. It's important to us. If people are first, we got to be there. We are all about, listening and responding. When you think about what our teams do up in, New York right now with snow and on the ramp and pushing, loading bags in the, in the freezing cold, it's we've got to be out there and got to listen and have to respond. What we do is hard work. It's complex and it's hard. So they know more about the job than we do here sitting in Atlanta at headquarters. So listen and respond. So we, multiple, right, avenues to listen. And, a few examples in that, COVID, for example. Many of you know, most of you are from Atlanta. We blocked the middle seat. We blocked it as much for our employees as we did our customers. Our people didn't want it. No different than customers didn't want to be out flying on an airplane. But we said, let's block that middle seat, putting our people first for the safety of our people, safety of our customers. Let's block that middle seat. We are all willing as servant leaders. Another example is rolling up our sleeves and getting out there. Hopefully none of you were in the middle of the CrowdStrike situation last July on Delta. It was horrific, but we all emptied our headquarters. We have what we call a behind the wings. So we empty headquarters at that moment. We put on our vest and we're out in the airport helping our teams either load bags or be in the terminal. So you're walking that walk, if you will, and walking the talk. And then, from a pay perspective, our philosophy is that our people are leading the industry in total compensation. We firmly believe that. That is something that we are committed to. We publicly commit to it. And one of my favorite days is February 14th, so tomorrow. So we have a profit sharing program back to that. That's a part of that industry leading comp. Our Delta people share in the success. Again, we don't accomplish anything carrying 200 million people a year without our people. So we'll give away $1.4 billion tomorrow. So equal to 5 weeks of pay for our Delta people. And it's the most fun day ever because you can just go out and thank people in a very genuine and authentic way. Of course, we thank our people all the time, but we go everywhere throughout the U.S. and thank people and give money.
That's awesome. That sounds like a lot of fun. Let's talk about specific programs. Like, I remember you mentioned like an employee savings program or employee assistance when somebody has challenges. Mm-hmm. How do those show up?
Yeah,
to me, that's something that any organization at any size can put into practice.
Yeah, we have an emergency savings plan where and part of this is financial literacy as well as helping people when things go wrong. We initiated that really coming out of COVID, but if our Delta team will go through, we have some online courses that our Delta team, you can go through and you get an emergency savings of $1,000. Why wouldn't anybody do it? So it's $1,000 out there for our teams if they need it. The other one that, again, back to our philosophy of people first and caring, our former CEO, started what we call the Care and Scholarship Fund. He donated money to create this fund for Delta people when they're in need, that they can draw from this fund. All the Delta people have the opportunity to contribute to that fund. It doesn't matter whether it's $1 or $5 or $100, and it's there for our Delta people to apply when they need it. A recent great example is in California with the fires in California. We had 8 Delta employees who lost their homes. It was horrific. But they immediately, right when that happened, the next day, money from that care fund, they can apply and we give it to them to just, help them out, get them when something horrible happens to help them out. So multiple, programs out there to support.
I'm always impressed by how the leaders at Delta, how you all stay connected to the front line. I remember Bob Summers introduced you in that video. I remember getting on a plane one time and I'm walking back because I'm not flying in the front. I'm flying, Bart, we're flying further back, right, in these planes. And
we'll take you wherever you want to sit.
Okay, so I get back there and Bob is a vice president, a senior vice president, and he's not sitting in the front of the plane. And we get back there, and I ask him about it, and he's like, I think this was when Richard Anderson was still CEO, and he said, you never want to be on the plane and have the CEO walk past you to their seat. And so I've just thought that's fascinating.
Yeah.
You have risen from a flight attendant to the C-suite. What are things that you do to be able to stay connected to the front line?
Yeah, for me, the minute I lose touch of our people, whether it was in my former job or this any job I've had, then it's time for me to go. And I think the other senior leaders would say the same thing. I am out there all the time. Tomorrow's a great example. All of our leaders will be everywhere out talking to people, connecting with people. When I am going through the airport traveling, I stop and talk to the gate agent. I am in the galley on board that airplane. What's going on? We've got, and I'm sure many of you have business resource groups, employee resource groups, connecting with them. And we have town halls, that I so applaud. Again, I think this is just a part of our philosophy is around transparency, communication. We have town halls every month with our people, and many of you are global companies, people around the world. Connection and alignment are the two most important things we can do in a people business, and knowing we need to support our people. So town halls and the opportunity to ask questions, and then I think underneath all of that, another cultural moment is what we call an open door policy. And it started with CE Woolman, it's still with Ed. Ed will get an email from a flight attendant, a gate agent, a ramp agent, a mechanic. Ed reads his email, he responds, but that keeps, Ed is out as visible as we all are, but that keeps him aligned with what's on the hearts and minds of our employees. Same with me, we're all open to it. Somebody wants to come meet with us, we're open to it, but that keeps us where we need to be with being in the know, because again, it's a hard job. It's a hard job for our people, and the more we can stay motivated, the better.
Let's talk about this overarching thing. You talk a lot about a culture of care, and I would love to connect those two, because you're talking about staying connected to the front line and programs and compensation, but how did those translate into the customer experience?
Yeah.
Where customers feel cared for?
Yeah, I think it's that virtuous circle again. We care for our people, we role model that, they're gonna care for our customers, and it sounds simple, but when you've got 100,000 people across the world trying to keep them aligned, it's a great opportunity for us. I think one thing we do every year, which kicks it off for our people, gets our people going and care for customers, we have what we call Velvet. So this started out of bankruptcy at Delta. It was a tough time, it was a dark day for Delta. We had a hostile takeover after that. US Airways wanted to come in and take over Delta, wipe our history out. We started what we call Velvet Rope, which is invited our frontline people, 800 people, to come into Atlanta, the old Macy's building downtown. If any of you remember that, it still had the brand names on the wall, but empty shell of a building, but brought them in to come in, within the Velvet Rope to hear what's going on at Delta. We knew that we needed to inspire and motivate our people to not let US Airways take us over. We were in a dark time with bankruptcy. We had to build ourselves back. So it was a moment of alignment around our people and what we needed to do for the customer. We still do that today. It's going on now almost 20 years. And so we will go 15 places this year, 800 employees every single time. Ed kicks off every single one of them, but it's alignment around this care and caring for, here's what's going on in the business, recognizing our team, thanking them. So pouring into that, pouring into training, and then really leading our people from there through training and all of these things to say, we've got rules, we've got policies at Delta, but as Delta people, we need you to look at the situation and apply common sense and care for the customer there. Everything can't be in a rule book, and you can imagine.
Let's talk about this. That is, because that's interesting. That is a tension between the customer care, the creative side, and how we want to care for people,
Yeah.
and the operations side.
Yeah.
How do you navigate that?
Yeah, we tell our people, you've got a customer standing in front of you, you're the one that hears the situation, you make the decision what you need to do for the customer at that moment, knowing this is our policy, these are our guidelines, but I'm not so caught up on the word empowered, but we empower our people to do it. A great example, because we get that consternation every day, but we had a customer a few months ago who left, she was running to the airport, got in her seat, she sat down, and she goes, oh my gosh, I left my leather jacket in the terminal. The door had shut, so we're all about on time. The most important thing that you all tell us, it's about on time. You know, that is first and foremost foundational to everything we do. Our teams are measured by on time. Did that door shut on time? Did the airplane push back on time for our customers? So she's sitting there, she's telling the flight attendant, the door's shut, but the flight attendants, but what she explained was my car keys are in that jacket, and she was flying out to Salt Lake, and where she lived was 2 hours from Salt Lake, so she needed her car, and she was getting there at 10 at night. So flight attendant hears all this, goes to the cockpit, we got a problem, the door's shut, cockpit called the gate agent ran to get the jacket, gave it to the mechanic on the ground, they put a ladder up, put it through the cockpit door, gave her jacket. Our people care about customers. We try to role model it for them by being servant leaders and giving them the tools they need, and they in turn, do the same. We've got on our flight attendant side, we've got pursers, our lead flight attendants on international, will handwrite letters for every single person, sitting in Delta One. There's nothing in the rule book. We don't train them that way, but it's giving them the tools to go be able to do that. And I think tools are a big part of that as well. If we're giving them the tools, putting them first, then they can apply that to our customers.
Just to go down on that for a second, if somebody fills out a survey or they give feedback positive about a specific flight attendant or a gate agent, how do you get that? Do you try to get that to that employee?
Yes, we really do read your surveys, so please fill them out. I know you get a lot, but those, in my past life, that's what I did first thing every morning, is look at that dashboard. How are we doing in every single market? How are we, what's the NPS of the Detroit airport? What's the NPS on the A321? How are we doing with boarding? So we really do fill all of those out. And, when you all recognize somebody through that, we have a process in place to recognize our team. It's one of the most favorite things that I know we can all do is recognize our team. But we also take it when we don't do well, we literally monitor all of that. A great example was our NPS for boarding was not good. We all know, you've all been there, our process was not good. We changed up how we boarded last year and the process of how we board to zones, and our NPS is up 20 points. So we would have known, but we used that dashboard, right, every day to look at those gaps. We measure, 26 different touch points we call it the customer travel ribbon. We measure 26 different key elements of your travel. That's how we knew we needed to up it. You all kept telling us it's bad, and and then we can act on it. So.
Okay, I'm gonna take one of my problems and see if you can help solve it. Is that how is this?
I got enough problems of my own.
Okay, so at ADDO, we're able to work with best-in-class brands like Delta or Coke or Chick-fil-A, and one of the challenges if you go to other companies, it's easy to dismiss and say, well, of course Delta can do that, or of course Coke can do that, or Chick-fil-A, but I'm curious if you have some thoughts of what are specific things that anybody at any brand can apply, things that have worked at Delta that would make a difference other places?
To drive the culture?
To drive, customer experience and culture.
Yeah. I think, first of all, it has to start at the top. I think it starts with your CEO. if they're not aligned with the culture and how you want to drive the culture, everything else flows from there. I mean, I know we all know that. And we're fortunate in that we've had CEO after CEO for 100 years leading that and driving that. It goes next into hiring. All these things are obvious, but they are intentional on our part. Taking our values and hiring for those values. Delta isn't for everybody. We are a high-performing organization. We want to stay that way, and we hire accordingly from that perspective.
I remember when you were leading flight attendants, one year you told me some crazy stat about how many people had applied for how many jobs.
200,000 people apply to be a flight attendant every year for 1,000 positions. So it's a tough, we're very thankful for that, but you can imagine our hiring process and working through that. It's great because that reaffirms for us, is not so much about the number, but it reaffirms for us that the brand is a desired place for people to come, and we want great people and great individuals. So that hiring is a big part of it. I think constantly training, the Delta team, reinforcing our culture, role modeling that is important. We have created employee engagement teams across all of our frontline groups, back to the listening post, to make sure that, we're big organizations. Our mechanics, 14,000 mechanics. So we have an employee engagement group of mechanics who make the world a little smaller for the leaders of maintenance to know what are those top issues every day. Surveying your employees, I think, are important. We do that every single year, and we take it and act on it every single year. So those are some tactical things. And then again, I think I mentioned the Velvet. That has been one of the most successful things we've done. It's a lot of money, it's a lot of time, but for Ed and the senior leaders to commit to being, 15, cities, whatever the number is, we spend a whole day aligning them on the business, and people and culture is a part of that, cultivates that too, so.
I love that. I got a lot more, but I'm going to see if I want to turn it over to you all for a few minutes. If you've got specific questions, and I'm guessing you're willing to cover both chief people officer side and customer experience side. Hopefully we don't have just people talking about new snack options on the plane, but maybe we'll hit that too. So,
well, what do you want on that?
That's all right. There we go. We'll kick it off. Go ahead, Brad.
Yeah, I have a Delta experience to share that happened a few years ago. My wife and I going to a conference. It was down in Aruba. I get a call down there that my uncle had passed away. He was sick. So we were trying to coordinate how to get back with a flight to Atlanta and then to Memphis. So the turnaround time between Atlanta and Memphis was going to be about 25 minutes, but it was our only chance to get there.
Yeah.
And being the oldest of all the cousins, I felt it was really important, especially important that I get there. When we get to the airport in Aruba, and the flight was delayed, there were bad winds, and we were delayed. And I just mentioned to the gate agent, I'm like, golly, so trying to get back, do you think there's any chance we'll be able to make it into Atlanta in time? And of course, she didn't know at that time, but as we were waiting, the flight was about a half hour late. But before we got on the plane, she came over to my wife and I and said, hey, sir, I just want to let you know we're going to be able to leave here. We haven't made the announcement yet, but I hope that gives you a little comfort. You're going to be able to get back. And then as we're flying back home, the pilot had no idea what was going on with our situation. But your comment about being on time, he said, well, I want to let everybody know we're going to try to make up some time, and we're going to step on the gas a little bit and get y'all back in time. And as we're getting back, we're still a few minutes behind. I asked the flight attendant, I'm like, is there anything we can do? Can you call and let them know that we're trying to get on that flight? And she said, well, I can't do that. She goes, I'll come back to you. So she comes back, and we're sitting further back in the plane. And she makes the announcement, which I've now heard many a time. She goes, hey, we have someone that needs to get off the flight. They're trying to get to a family event. So it's like the Red Sea part, you get off. Okay. We run through the airport. We made the flight, and we got there. And all those people never know how they impacted us, but it's that type of impact that I was already loyal to Delta, but there's no way I'm flying any other airline because of that experience. So
thank you.
Thank you
Thank you.
to Delta.
No, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And, you know, that's one opportunity at Delta as we think about that culture of care and caring for our customers. You know, we hired 65,000 people since the pandemic. We have 100,000 employees, we hired 65,000. And you can imagine through that, we lost seasoned employees. We were the only airline, we didn't furlough our people, but we offered opportunities for our people to leave during COVID so we would not have to furlough, because that is against our people first culture. And so, you know, you can imagine we lost a lot of experience there, and then you can also imagine we've got a lot of new leaders too, and that's certainly something in my former role and this role is just making sure with 65,000 new people. When I started at Delta, I was flying with people who've been flying for years. So I learned and watched and listened and, okay, this is how you do it when you have this kind of situation. And they're all fully trained, but they're 4 people that are brand new or pushing a plane back together. They've been here 2 years, they're pushing it back. They know the technique, it's safe. But you know, you learn from people that are seasoned around you. So that is, you know, certainly a big focus of ours is making sure, back to really what we're talking about, the connection that this 65,000 people, they know how to connect, they're engaging, they know the culture well enough to know that everything can't be in a rule book, and when you can help out, you need to pour in and help out in the moment. You know what, we're gonna make some mistakes. If we do, that's fine, but pour into that customer standing in front of you. So thank you for sharing that.
That is awesome. All right, who else? Got time for 1 or 2 more? Yes, we'll go David and then Paula.
Allison, I think it's fascinating that you moved from customer experience to chief people officer. For a lot of companies, that would be viewed as a disconnect. I think it's brilliant. And I just loved your comments about, you know, what was the thinking behind that? And a lot of people in HR, my experience has been they're more compliance-based.
Yes.
And you sound like you're more commitment-based. And so it's brilliant to me, but it may not make sense to a lot of people. So if you could just comment on what was the thinking behind that, and what have you seen in terms of what you learned in customer experience that you're now applying?
Yeah. I would say it goes back to the culture. And Ed, you know, from Ed's perspective, there's nothing more important than the culture, and the culture is all about our people. And so for him and making the decision for me to move was, I know the culture. I've been in that 17.5-inch runway on board the airplane. I've been on the front line. I've been here for a long time. I've supported different groups, and I'm not, you know, it's just, I know the culture inside and out. And you know, so it was an opportunity for me to come and carry that culture, that people first culture forward. Absolutely, we want to be compliant from an HR perspective, but for us, that role is about the people. And you think about these 65,000 people that just started. What is that employee value proposition for that next generation of people? And so my opportunity for being out, hiring them as a part of my former life and bringing all that over from that perspective was the thinking behind it. And, you know, I can also say, you know, HR was a customer of mine, you know, as Chief Customer Experience Officer. And you know, it was great because coming over, I know there are things that I can do for the enterprise from being out in the operation, being in this role for the enterprise from a people perspective, that I can help Delta, right, from that perspective. And it's been night and day, David. So I joined January 1 as Chief People Officer. For 40 years when it snowstormed, and you know what happens when it snowstorms in Atlanta? Well, we had 2 in January. In case you don't know, we know, you know. And when that first Friday when it happened, I was like, what am I supposed to do? I need to be worried about whether pilots are getting to the airport and flight attendants are getting to the airport and we're de-icing. You know, are we de-icing in Atlanta? And I was like, I don't need to, you know, be on fire. My hair doesn't need to be on fire today, because it was just you're in it in the operation and you eat, sleep, and breathe, getting those airplanes out and taking care of our people. And so it was a big switch for me personally, but I know I can bring that operational perspective, that culture, and lead the way that we want to take the culture forward for the next 100 years. It's been a blessing to be here and excited to be it.
That's awesome. All right, Paula, I know you spend a lot of times on a Delta plane. I've run into you in the airport before.
I know, I'm so excited. Just hit Diamond, so it's like a whole new world has opened up. So
Yay.
I'm really proud. And the other piece to that is that I've had to take care of my mom in Florida, so I've now become a connecting. So the first time I missed a flight, I literally didn't know what to do, because I tell people all the time, I'm Atlanta spoiled, because that means you just go Atlanta to a destination and back. So I never knew what to do, so it was quite funny. But what I wanted to tell you is that I really admire the experience that you have ingrained in all of your employees, because it does linger in them outside of their work life. And I think that's really important for people in development and in the world, because as I was changing flights, I actually would say that I would love to have more flights direct out of Jacksonville. So I'm putting that plug in if you can send that
Note
on
to
a little
self.
bit. Yes, thank you. But I have noticed that I've been doing Jacksonville to New York or to JFK. So I've been doing those two lately, and it's kind of calming. It's a whole different atmosphere. So it was kind of interesting. But I'm standing in LaGuardia one day. So this is how the culture kind of goes on beyond. I don't know anyone in LaGuardia. All of a sudden I hear, Miss Weeks, and I turn around. It is the gate agent from Jacksonville, Florida, who had taken her daughter on vacation to New York to see the Rockettes at Christmas. She recognized me because I am in Jacksonville Airport all the time, and wanted to say hello to me. So that culture and that experience has not just ingrained in her for her experience every day, but now it's extended into her personal life, and to show her daughter who's in elementary school this thing, you're paying it forward so much more. So I think what you've established between experience and culture and all of that is going to go much further than just in a day-to-day work life. So that's all I wanted to say.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
That's great. That's great.
We had you made me think about, our people are just, they're amazing. And we had one of our gate agents, you made me think about this, and this was late last year. She knew this customer, same situation, a Diamond customer, served that Diamond customer every week. And she found out that he needed a kidney, had to go through a kidney transplant. They kept talking week after week after week. He didn't have a match, couldn't find a match. Well, lo and behold, Paula, our gate agent, was a match. So she gave her kidney to one of our customers. They'll be back to connection.
That is crazy.
They'll be connected to life. And, that we're not perfect. And, we're not perfect by any means. All of our people aren't. We're not perfect. But, that's the kind of thing at Delta we can't ever lose. We have to instill that and continue to reinforce that every day. And they do it. They do it on their own.
That's awesome. All right, I've got one final question. I'll say this before. Allison embodies what it means to create authentically. We didn't even scratch the surface of all the work you've done with breast cancer and human trafficking and so many of those things, and even working with Greg on your team. Your whole team exemplifies it. Later today, we're going to be talking even more about how to create authentic connections. And one of the principles is to prioritize the personal. I remember sitting across from you in your office, and you were talking about the power of personalization. Could you just talk about that piece of the customer experience as we close?
Yeah. No, I think for all of us, we just want to know we matter. And we carry 200 million people. It's not easy for our customers, to get where they need to be inside the airport. We want to make that seamless, but we all want to know we matter. And for us, personalization is our next frontier. That's the biggest opportunity we have. You think about every million miler starts at 0. And every million miler that becomes, every, first-time flyer, They become a SkyMiles member, we start to know them a little bit more. SkyMiles member gets an American Express card, we get to know them a little bit more. The more we go, and we have a 15 million miler, I was sharing with some of you, which is amazing. On average, it takes 25 years to get 1 million miles, and we have a 15 million miler. But in any event, we know him well. We know everything about him. But, imagine our opportunity. Our revenue goes up, our net promoter score goes up as you move, right? As it would make sense. And so for us, we captivate people on average for 2.5 hours on board an airplane. So how can we use the data that we have, the products that we have, to continue to get to know them? Everybody wants to be mattered, and everybody wants to be associated to a brand that they love, and they can't love it if we don't know each other. And so a couple of things that we're doing. Some of you may have seen at CES. We're launching a Delta Concierge that really starts to know Dawn, and if Dawn's got an international trip coming up in a month and we know Dawn's passport is expired or the rules she's gonna mess up, we're gonna have a concierge that will be talking to Dawn in time enough to make sure she's got, oh, by the way, have you checked your passport expiration date? And then moving Dawn through the airport in an easy digital way for Dawn to get through the airport. Dawn's in the air, she's 35,000 feet up, she's landing. Dawn, do you need an Uber? You usually get an Uber. Do you need an Uber? If so, we'll have an Uber waiting for you once you land at the terminal, meet at so-and-so. So that, starts to move Dawn along. Dawn knows we know her. Same on board the airplane with Delta Sync. We've got 170,000 screens, more than any other carrier out there, but how do we use that to start personalize? Some of you may have seen it. You'll see your name on the back of that. That's the beginning of that. If you don't know, that operates like your TV at home. You can save your favorites so that every time, if you're watching Yellowstone on this leg and you're connecting, it's in your favorites, you didn't finish that episode, it'll pop right back up to say, Kevin, do you want to continue watching Yellowstone? We're starting to know you. And so the opportunities are endless for us to be able to, in that in-seat screen, say, Kevin, do you want your usual Diet Coke? So that's the path we're on around personalization, and you couple that with our people, and all of our teams have more and more information about our customers to be able to go up and hopefully they've thanked you for being a million miler or thanked you, you've now just become a diamond. We're putting that in their hands so they can personalize the experience too. So,
that's incredible.
Pretty exciting.
Well, this has been awesome. I love hearing from a best-in-class brand and a truly authentic leader. Will you guys thank Allison for her time today?
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.